Hello everyone, my name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 5, Episode 8.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we're going to pick up where we left off in the book Ultimate Journey by Robert Monroe. We are in chapter 14, The Sum and the Parts. So to start here, Monroe says he's speaking with his eye there, these kind of spirits that he feels this connection to, and he says, thinking positively helps, does it? And the spirits responded, partly. Deliberately ignoring the input helps more. So the reason that we started there in the middle of the conversation and I cut that little piece out was I thought that was interesting. Okay, so thinking positively, right? It's a great idea. It's important to do. We want to imagine things in a positive way, things being successful, right? But we have to be careful with thinking positively if it's forced. If it's forced by negative thoughts, if we're having negative thoughts, something maybe depression or something sad, something that we're worried about or having an anxiety over, if those things, if that's what's occurring in our mind, and in order to deal with them, we kind of force ourselves to do this positive thinking. What we're doing is we're kind of artificially having positive thinking because those worries and anxieties and concerns are still right behind us. We are being chased by the monster still, but we're just going along, thinking positively, kind of, just trying to escape, but those things are still there following. They're right behind us, breathing down our neck, right? But the spirits say it's better to just ignore those things. I think that's interesting. When we get into this place where we have worries and concerns and issues that we can't deal or we can't do anything about, right? Maybe there are things that are so existential that we'll never be able to fix, right? There's nothing that we can personally do. Or there are issues and concerns that we just can't address at the moment, right? Why worry about something that's coming up later on if there's nothing we can do about it today? If that worry is just going to continue to recycle in our mind and keep us distracted, it's better to just ignore those things and focus on the few things that we can do. Be very conscious in what we're doing, even if that means doing boring chores or working on a project or something like that. We've talked about this before, the importance of being conscious with what you're doing. If you're doing something that you love, maybe you're an artist like myself and you're working on an art project, the last thing that you want to do, and I dealt with this quite a bit in the past, is while you're working on the thing that you love doing, instead of focusing and being conscious to what you're doing, instead you're worrying and concerned and anxious about whatever else is going on in your life. You're wasting that opportunity. So make sure you're conscious and experiencing life, right? So Monroe here, will move on here, and it says, and there they were, thousands upon thousands of lines, each glowing with energy, extending outward in many dimensions. from where I was. The I there of me. Some lines were bright, some were dim, but each ended in what seemed a cluster of radiation, another I there. How could I have missed such a connection? The spirits say, you did not miss it. You merely perceived them in another way. These are the sum of all the personalities we have ever been, connecting with those we think of and those who think of us. The bright ones are those associated with you in this lifetime. My God, Monroe said, and the spirit said, no, friend. No God here as you think of it. Sorry. So what Monroe is talking about is this I there, this idea that there are other spirits connected to us, other people's lives, their experiences are connected to us in a way. And not only people who have already lived life and moved on, but really even more of those emotional energy, radiation, like we talked about in the last episode, the connections between human beings, right? So Monroe was kind of seeing himself as this glowing ball of radiation, and all of these lines were shooting out to it, connecting to other glowing balls of radiation. And those were kind of other people, other real people in his life. And he was able to see the connections that are woven between all of us, almost like a spider web. All of the emotional connections that we have with other people, including people who have already come and gone, maybe that we've never met, but it's more of that spiritual energy that's connected to us. I thought that was kind of interesting visualization. So the spirit says here, you were considering the number of physically living humans and how many of them have as much or more ability as you have to move around without the physical body. So now Monroe is thinking, okay, here on Earth at this current given time, how many other people are out there who have this ability to have out-of-body experiences, okay? And Monroe says, yes, I was. In my estimation, there were about 6,000 of them. Interesting. So this is in a world at his time. He talks about there are about 6 billion people on the planet when he wrote this. And he guesses that there are about 6,000 people total who can have these out-of-body experiences consciously. That was his estimation. The spirits say, now look at the influence you could have if there were 6,000 of you. You could change the world very quickly. Monroe responds, then why hasn't it happened? Why haven't we heard about them? Okay. So if there are 6,000 people out there who can have these out-of-body experiences, why aren't we hearing more about it? And the spirits say this. They keep themselves quiet and hidden, as you said. We did not expect that you would come out into the open, but one in your personality pattern insisted that you did. You thought at one time that you would really change the world, and that was not your intention. The others who go out of body simply keep quiet and exert influence. Monroe says, but why? What purpose is served by keeping quiet? The spirits say, that is your emotional personality speaking again, always wanting to do good. The others know that they cannot change the system, and they don't wish to. They are content to enjoy themselves in the Earth life system, and the only influence they exert is to maximize their experience. They do not want their abilities to be known by anyone. So this is very interesting. Some people might think that is kind of a selfish thing. If you have these abilities to have out-of-body experiences, and keeping them to yourself and using these things like manifestation only to benefit yourself, some might think it's selfish. Who am I to judge? I don't know. If that is who you are and what you're doing, that's up to you. In my opinion, here in the Mind War, one of the things that we share, one of the few responsibilities that we preach, right, is to, number one, have your own experiences, and number two, share it with others. That's the most important thing. That's the one commandment that we follow. You must have your own experiences to be an elite member of the Gateway Explorers, club here. To be a mind warrior, citizen samurai, guerrilla guru, or warrior monk, you have to have your own experiences, and then you have to share them with others, even if it's just one other person. But Monroe talked about this idea of wanting to change the world, right? To assist humankind in its evolution, in its conscious evolution. Now, throughout my time, my professional career as an information technology specialist, I looked at the internet and computers, and again, this was from the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, up into almost 2020, right? Over that 20 years, in the beginning, I had a very utopian vision for what IT, the internet, and computers should look like. I thought we really were on the cusp of having tools that would gather real, true information about our world and spread it out to everyone. Everyone would have access to real information. And with that information, we could make real change, create kind of a utopian society that dealt with real troubles and real issues. And we talked about things truthfully. Sadly, I was so mistaken. The internet has turned into a dystopian nightmare in so many ways. There are few paths to different truths out there. I like to hope that the Mind War podcast is an example of one of those places where you can find something real, something true. For as esoteric and occult that all of these topics and subjects that we are talking about are, there is truth in all of this. All of these things are actually happening. I am experiencing these things, right? And I know you are having amazing experiences on your end. So it was difficult to watch my professional expertise turn into really this state of mis and disinformation by these gatekeepers at the top, and just the kind of sad type of control they're forcing out there. They seem so desperate in what they do. In fact, one of my Instagram posts was just taken down this morning, one that I posted months and months ago, probably over a year ago now. And it was taken down, and some new rule came into play or whatever. It's, who cares? Whatever. It's just, it shows again their desperation for control. And sadly, again, those people at the top, they really are the ones that seem to be the mis and disinformation agents out there, right? So let's go on here. Monroe says, and the others, those who were not human. Okay. So now Monroe is again kind of speaking with this, what he calls the I there, this group of spirits that he kind of has connection to. And now he's talking to them about artificial intelligences, things that are intelligent life forms in the universe, aka aliens that aren't human, but have still lived a physical life in some type of other life form somewhere here in the universe. They have their own experiences. And from what he's saying, they can interact with humans. And so now he's asking about those artificial intelligence life forms. These spirits go on to say they are unpredictable. There are two kinds. There are those who have had the same origins as we did, but lived physically elsewhere in the universe. They know how to work in time much better than we do, but for the most part, they have only a curiosity about humans. And Monroe says, well, what about the second kind? And the spirits say, that is for you to discover. When you have done so, when you have found the right one, we shall have a new home. You will search among the non-human intelligences, and you will not be deluded or led astray. So again, they're kind of telling him you have this new mission, and that is to find this new home. Remember, Monroe talked about finding what he thought was heaven, where he was floating on clouds and it was warm and beautiful and music was playing. But he found that it was basically on a loop. He's like, this isn't heaven. This is almost like a hellish nightmare where the same song is just played over and over in the clouds. The patterns just repeated in this loop. He said, this can't be heaven. There has to be something more. And the spirits say, well, you need to go search for it. And he says, the search, can you tell me exactly what I'm looking for? The spirits say, where we go next. That's what you're looking for. When we have been storing up knowledge and experience, and now we have learned enough here. There is no reason for us to stay. Monroe says, I see, and that is why I shall make this run. And the spirits say, it is. There is one thing you should know. Whatever you encounter, nothing, absolutely nothing, can destroy you. You are more than your emotional energy, regardless of your physical body. So, again, Monroe is talking about this I there, this part of him inside of him that seems to be connected to all of these, thousands and thousands of spirits that have lived before, and they really are kind of turning to him now and saying, what is next? How do we move forward? How do we go on to whatever comes next? Because it sounds like they've been stuck almost in a loop, right? Maybe in their reincarnation loop. And so that's why Monroe is going to do some searching here. The spirits say, we can help you with that. We can show you a sample of the support you have here in your own cluster. Do you wish to see this? So what they're saying now is, we're going to show you us. We're going to let you see us for who we truly are. And we're going to show you an example of us supporting you on this journey. And he says, please show me. And then Monroe describes that as this. Thousands of hands reaching out to touch me, eyes staring at me with joy and hope, overwhelming radiance. I know as love sweeping over me and into every part of my being. All of these I am, we are, and emotion, from the bittersweet smell of success to the pain of parting, mixed with fun and laughter, the anger of ignorance, the blindness of belief without foundation, the beauty, the sound, the singing voices. So when Monroe was allowed to see all of these spirits basically in the crowd around him, looking to him for answers, looking to him for guidance on where to go next, that is what he saw. All of these people looking to him, reaching out to him with an overwhelming radiance of love. Monroe says, tell me, who was it that I talked with? Who was so patient with me and knew the answers? Why are you laughing? So Monroe is now asking about his spirit friend from before. We read about him in future or in past episodes. And it says, the spirits say, who knows you best of all? And Monroe responds with, me? I was talking with myself, but what about the time factor? The spirits say, you were talking with yourself. Who else knew you better? And Monroe responds, so that's why the meetings ended. I ran out of information, and as the spirit friend, I knew better. That was so. The process served a valuable and necessary function at that stage in your growth. It did indeed, said Monroe, but I don't remember playing this role of the spirit friend. Well, no, you have not done it yet. Oh, then I will do it when? When you return. Does that make you feel more confident? So, in past episodes, we've talked about Monroe meeting with his spirit friend, a spirit guide. What Monroe is finding out right now is that spirit guide, again, we've talked about this multiple times, that spirit guide was him. He was guiding himself because, again, The answers come from within. The help, it comes from within. It is us. And now Monroe is saying, well, I don't remember doing this. How did this happen? And this is what's interesting. The spirits tell him, the you that helped you is the you after you have died. So once Robert Monroe passed and his spirit went on, his spirit now has no connection to time and space. It can move throughout time. So now we ourselves, our own spirits, after we pass, we can go back through time and be our own spirit guides. We are the ones helping us, no one else. Monroe says, as for my assignment, I understood now that it was beyond mere curiosity. It had all been carefully planned, even if I did not know how to identify what I was looking for. So again, Monroe's job was to go out and kind of find what comes next, and hopefully we'll figure that out in the next chapter of Ultimate Journey. All right, folks, let's jump into chapter 15 of Ultimate Journey, titled Long Trail A-Winding. So this was a long chapter, 20-something pages. Let's see what I pulled out of it here. Okay, so Monroe, in this chapter, it starts out where, again, he's having his out-of-body experience, right? So he's floating up above the earth, and that first layer of energy that we float through as we move upwards is that emotional energy band. It kind of surrounds the earth. And when you're looking back at the earth, you see everyone's emotions represented as kind of radiant light. So it's very loud and chaotic, right? It's everyone on the planet, all of their emotions at one time. So as he moves past that layer, then we get into the next layers, right? Where we find people who maybe have recently passed away and they don't quite understand where they're at or what they're doing. We find people who are maybe having an out-of-body experience while they sleep and they don't quite know where they're at. So he's moving past those. He's kind of going through the interstate is what he calls it. And the interstate has all sorts of off-ramps into different areas, right? Where people, if they were physically addicted to things, there's going to be an off-ramp real early on the interstate where they get right back off. And their spirit is caught in that loop of trying to fulfill whatever their addiction was, right? Drugs, sex, whatever their issue was, that's where they go. And then Monroe says, as you go upwards, you start to see other off-ramps, very wide, lots of people, lots of spirits exiting in these off-ramps. And those are the religious belief systems. So those people are going off to what they believe their religion taught them heaven was, right? And so each religion has its own off-ramp, okay? So Monroe keeps going. He keeps moving further, saying, nope, I'm not getting off on any of these off-ramps. I have to really get to the source. I have to keep going down the interstate. And now we're going to kind of see what some of these things that Monroe encounters as he goes forward. And he starts like this. A blinding energy, I cannot move. A voice in my head. A cold, admonitory voice. I am the Lord thy God, whom you serve, says the voice. Monroe. A feeling of intense pressure, as if I'm dissolving. Now I am in water. My lungs are full of water. I must have air. Get rid of the water. No, it can't be. It isn't so. There is no water. I have no lungs. I am being made to think that this is where I am. It is an influence. I know it is not so. The pressure releases. I can feel fingers of energy probing for the core of me. I can I can stop this. Close the receptors, close tight. I remember how. And the voice says, you do not remember. You do not remember. Monroe goes on, but I do. I remember the tests, the training experience from my eye there. They were so real. I am ready, ready for this demanding energy. It cannot harm me. But what is this? What God can this be? It cannot harm me or affect me. Be calm, warm, and friendly. The voice says, do you not accept me as your God? Monroe says here, the idea of a God that threatens amuses me. Let this idea flow out. Do you not fear me? The voice rumbled. Monroe responds, I release a picture of me blowing apart again and again into millions of fragments and reconstructing after every explosion. Showing this spirit that he is in control. The spirit responds, you are damned. You are no more than wasted energy of me who is your Lord. The energy fades to a tiny point and vanishes. How many more like this may I encounter? A waste of my effort. That is the imprint of the religious God that was forced upon Monroe through his life. The same God that is forced upon the West and much of the planet. You know the God that I am speaking of. You know all the forms that he takes in all of the different religious texts, but you know exactly where he comes from. That is what he is going to do when you find him, when you meet up with him in whatever comes next. He is going to try to use fear to push you back downwards. But remember, as we've been told, there is no fear here in the mind war, and nothing that we encounter can destroy us. We are in control. Let's go on through this chapter again. A long chapter here. So Monroe talks more. Now that he's gone past this pseudo God, this God of fear that was placed upon us during our physical life, this societal and religious wet blanket that was forced upon all of us throughout life. It's still out there in so many ways, stronger than ever. It's becoming a monotheistic God. Soon there will be only one God that we are allowed to believe in. Be very careful, my friends. We are moving into dangerous territory spiritually in the very near future. But Monroe pushes on. He says, there is no fear here in the mind war. Let me keep searching. And as he goes through the darkness, he finally comes upon something real. A brilliant white light, a being that is so large that he cannot look upon all of it at one time. He just feels his presence next to it. The all-consuming feeling of love washes over him. He describes it as finally being part of the whole, being reunited with the whole. Okay? Again, we are just drops from that cloud. Our spirits are just single drops that come down from this cloud that we know of as God or the universe, whatever you want to call it. And someday we will return to it. But again, it takes effort. It takes work. You have to leave behind the trappings, the addictions of this physical world. We have to leave behind the fear that is placed on us by the societal and religious wet blankets. We remove all of those things and we go back to the whole. And this is what the whole tells Monroe. In human words, this is the best way they describe what they are and what we are. And the whole says this: we know this well. It can be said in your words. There is no beginning, there is no end. There is only change. There is no teacher, there is no student. There is only remembering. There is no good, there is no evil. There is only expression. There is no union, there is no sharing. There is only one. There is no joy, there is no sadness. There is only love. There is no greater, there is no lesser. There is only balance. There is no stasis, there is no entropy. There is only motion. There is no wakefulness, there is no sleep. There is only being. There is no limit, there is no chance. There is only a plan. This is as we know it to be. Now, that makes me think of temperature. We've talked about that before. There is no such thing as cold, and there is no such thing as hot. They are just parts of temperature. They are just different expressions of temperature. Temperature is the one thing. Hot and cold are just versions of it. But hot and cold are no different. They are all just one thing, and that is temperature. And that's what we have to understand here. Everything in our lives, although in the physical life and what we learn from society and culture and religion is that there are always two sides, the right and the left, the black and the white, right? It's not true. It's all just one, right? All expressions of color are still just color, just different shades, different temperatures. So let's see. So Monroe talks about how beautiful this experience was. And he says that he wanted to stay for much longer, but he was getting all of these signals that he needed to return to his physical body. And what he found when he returned to his physical body shocked him. And that was that his blood pressure was very low, his pulse rate was slow, and he was near heart fibrillation, right? He was having trouble breathing. So he rushed back into his body and recognized that his body was sort of in trouble. But he was able to kind of regain himself, regain his composure, breathing again. The heart started pumping again properly. And Monroe says this: it did indeed take several days. The physical body eventually returned to reasonable operation. The essence of me, however, did not. There was not simply a different overview, but a remembering of unlimited freedom, an ever so slight glimpse of an ultimate option. So again, when you have these experiences for the first time, when you have your first out-of-body experience and you truly understand that you are more than your physical body, it changes the way you look at life. You understand that there is something more. It's peaceful. It's calming. It brings contentment to your life, excitement in a way. It makes the life that we live here in our conscious day-to-day, mundane things that we have to do, it makes it more exciting because we know that these days are limited, but that we will be able to move forward in the next plane of existence, whatever it may be for us. And again, we're just trying to get a glimpse. We're trying to get some idea of what comes next so we don't have to approach it with fear, that we don't have to approach it with zero knowledge, right? Because again, what we see here in Robert Monroe in these final chapters of his third book, I think we see a man who is desperately grasping with his pending death, right? He knows that he is a short timer. And he really is, grasping not only for himself, but as we read at the beginning of the book, that his wife was also dying. So he's trying to provide her with answers. And there does in some ways seem to be a desperation in these final chapters, right? And as we've talked about before, the things in his book, they're not dogma. What he experiences may be different from what we experience. But it's important to kind of be able to compare what he's experienced versus what we do. That way we can kind of see, is there similarities through all of this work, right? All of these experiences that we have collectively, are there similarities within them? Are there things that we can, once we experience them, say, oh, we're familiar with what is about to happen because we've learned about it from others, or we've experienced it ourselves through the work that we do here in the Gateway. We are not going to go blindly into the good night. So this chapter finishes up here. And there is the added layer on my brain that gave me the chance to think instead of merely exist, to be what I am. Was that planned in the design or an experiment to observe the effect? Or was there another reason not yet understood? Chaos, organization, variables. They are all one and the same. Even if it can all be replicated eventually, I would like to meet the original designer just once. I guess we will see if Monroe meets that original designer in the coming chapters of this book. But for now, that was the very long chapter 15 titled Long Trail A Winding from the book Ultimate Journey by Robert Monroe. We are going to go do a deep dive into Wave 6 Odyssey Tape 2 Expansion after a word from our sponsor.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War.
Okay, welcome back, folks. Let's start our deep dive into Wave 6 Odyssey Tape 2 Expansion. Again, folks, it's so awesome. We're in Wave 6 now. This is it. We are in the home stretch. These are all tapes that I am experiencing really for the first time in my original listen through to the Gateway Experience tapes. I made it through Wave 5 and just sporadically into Wave 6 and 7. Just kind of listening to parts, but not thoroughly getting into them. And to be honest, until recently, I didn't even know there was a Wave 8. So we still have some very interesting new experiences to have. And so again, this is Wave 6 Odyssey Tape 2 Expansion, and it says this: the purpose of this exercise is to assist you in the lift-out procedure. The intent is not to travel far off, but to remain in close proximity to the physical body in locale 1. and to become familiar with the second body state in the surroundings of your own room. Okay, so now, again, we are really focusing on having an out-of-body experience, a true one, creating our second state body and remaining in locale 1. So again, let's quickly go over this. In Focus 10, we work in what I like to call the sleep dojo. That darkness, right? Kind of like Stranger Things in the upside down world. Our body is deep asleep, but our mind is wide awake. And here's the training center, that sleep dojo, where we learn tools like our energy toolbar, right? Then we move on to locale 1. That is where our spirit body can travel through the here and now, the real world, reality. We can meet and see and interact in ways with people who are on the planet right now going about their life. We can travel all around the world in locale 1. Then we go to locale 2. That is that dream-like state. Now we move into more of kind of a holographic type dream, right? Where things are very familiar to us, but very different from reality. We're able to control this reality in locale 2, this dream-like state. And then locale 3 is where we shoot out far beyond the limits of our universe into the true abyss, the darkness where we came from and the darkness that we ultimately will return to. That is locale 3, the abyss. And from locale 3, we can open doors back into locale 2, locale 1, the sleep dojo. We can really open up portals, gateways, if you will, and travel wherever we need to go, okay? So again, in this tape, Wave 6, Tape 2, we're going to create the spirit body and just float around our room a little bit. We're going to explore the room that we're in, that we're listening to the tape in locale 1. Now it says, allow yourself to feel the vibrations of your second body, your energy body, which is part of your you, surrounding your physical body. Second, take a moment now to become more acquainted with this essential part of you. Now allow this energy field to expand more and more as I guide you to Focus 12. So the first thing that you're going to do in Focus 10 is you're just going to take a moment to recognize that your second state body is being created. You can see the bright white energy. You can feel it starting to form and expand. And now we expand out into Focus 12, that state of expanded awareness and perception. And they go on here to say, feel the increase of your vibrations. Feel it pulsing at a very high speed. As you relax into this expanded state, begin to notice the feeling of getting lighter and lighter. Notice how nice it is to feel so very light. It is a wonderful feeling, just floating in the confines of your energy body. Now, when he talks about the pulsing energy at very high speeds, this was very interesting. Again, Wave 6, a lot of new sounds, okay? And so this pulsing that we hear is really from the left and the right. It's going back and forth. We're hearing a sound, radiate where it's coming from the distance and getting closer, but it's pulsating back and forth from each ear. It's, I used the term abrasive maybe in the last episode. It's kind of the same thing. It's very powerful. It's not as calming and relaxed as the other tapes. It's very powerful, pulsating back and forth, and it's really pulling you further and further, right? And now, this was so interesting. There are so many layers of sound in this tape so you have the sound of the spaceship taking off. You have the sound of the waves crashing in and out. You have the sound of this pulsing going back and forth from right to left. But below all of it, very quietly seeping through, I think what they were playing was a different sound set of wave sounds, right? Just the waves lapping in and out of the shore very quietly, a looped wave. So it was the exact same sound over and over, but so quiet, deep, deep, deep below all of the other sounds. So your mind was being bombarded with all of these very loud sounds, but it was trying to focus on this very faint sound. And very few times I picked it up as a wave, but so many other times I was picking it up as music or different tones. It was very strange. It was auditory hallucinations was the best way to describe it. I was hearing things that were definitely not on the tape. Again, not voices or anything, but more almost like music, almost like a symphony of music, right? That was being produced by this very low, beneath the surface sound that your ears and your mind were trying so desperately to focus on. And I think what happens is because you can't quite hear it, your mind tries to fill in the space, right? And when it does so, it creates this symphony of sound, this music, very intense, very strange, right? And so while all of this is happening, you're expanding. Your second body, your spirit body is expanding. And so this is what it felt like for me. So as it was happening, it was almost as if my spirit body had kind of a shell around it, right? A skin around it, if you will, almost like a balloon or like, plastic wrap or cling wrap or whatever it's called surrounding the bubble, but so thin, very thin, a thin protective layer on your spirit body as it pushed out into the room like a bubble. And what was happening is this kind of skin, I could feel it bumping up against the wall. I would feel it bumping up against the corner of the room and filling the room up. I could feel my spirit body filling the room. Now, I know that I was still in my physical body. I was still grounded there, but the spirit body expanded and was filling every crack of the room. And what I figured was going to happen next is that now that it expanded into the room and filled every inch of the room, that then I would be able to leave the physical and now start to explore, right? Almost as if my resonant energy balloon had filled the room and prepared the environment for me to travel. And here's what happened, folks. Once again, my fucking headphones went silent, okay? They were still connected with Bluetooth. The audio file, the tape, was still playing. Zero sound, okay? So I'll describe what happened in a moment, but after it was done, I went back and I realized that there was no silence in the audio recording itself. The recording still played on. Again, headphones still connected to Bluetooth, so I don't know why the sound just disconnected for some reason. Because I went back and I tried to pick back up where I left off. Didn't quite work, and we'll get into that in a moment. But here's what happened. Again, the expanded body, the second state body, expanded out into the room, and the tape shuts off. And in that silence, it was amazing, such an amazing feeling because the second state body is already growing, it's expanding, right? And all of a sudden it shuts off and I just feel like I'm floating in the darkness of space. It felt so calming. I just wanted to let it go. I was just really enjoying that feeling. It was so interesting just all of a sudden being in silence because the tape, again, the sounds were sort of abrasive. They're very loud, this engine roaring, and when it cut off, it was so peaceful. I was just floating there. Floating, I could just feel the spirit body around me. It felt amazing. but I had a worry. I said, okay, this happened before, and my guess is that the audio file is still playing, and I'm worried that it's just going to kick back in at any minute at full volume, and I'm going to get scared out of my skin, right? So I enjoyed the peace and tranquility for a few minutes, but I had to snap myself out of it, which again was interesting because there was no wake-up process, right? No one was walking me back into my physical body. I just had to wake myself out of it. And again, we've talked about those, the tools to do that. You just move your trigger finger, just anything to wake yourself up, right? So I woke up out of this very peaceful and content feeling. It was unfortunate. I would have just stayed there for the rest of the night. I went back. I reset everything. I went back a few minutes and tried to listen again, but it was too difficult to fall back into that state of being because again, I had already listened to like 25 minutes of the tape. So when you're disturbed like that, it's very difficult to just get right back into it. So I listened for a few more minutes and it just wasn't quite working. So I decided, you know what? I'm just going to turn everything off and I'm just going to lay here in bed for a while and relax. And so I just turned the tape off. I didn't finish all the way through the remainder. From what I read here, I was literally just minutes away from being walked back from focus 12 to 10 and then being woken up, right? Very typical way of ending the tape. But instead, the enhancements of the white teacher psilocybin were still flowing through my veins. I was nice and warm in bed, still wide awake. And I just allowed myself to stay there. I think I spent about an hour just wide awake, just kind of, daydreaming, if you will, enjoying the peaceful feeling, this feeling of no pain. The psilocybin really takes care of any pain that you're having. And again, the combination with the THC, just being warm in bed. Again, not being tired because I had slept so much that afternoon and had so much caffeine. I was able to just kind of stay there for an hour, maybe almost 2 hours. And this was fairly early for me. This was around 8 or 9 o'clock that all this was occurring. And I just stayed there in bed and all the lights were off in the house. And I was thinking, it's so early. I need to get up and have a snack and go watch TV and things like that. But instead, I just fell right to sleep. I just allowed myself to stay there. And I think I was asleep by 10 o'clock. I haven't fallen asleep that early in years, folks. I'm usually up till 2 a.m. at the earliest every night. So I got a great night's sleep. I woke up refreshed this morning, came down here and put the Mind War Studios back together because I had done some spiritual work down here the night before. Had a good meal and came down here and started doing the podcast, right? So again, another interesting tape. I think this is one to go back and review multiple times, right? This again, dedicated, focused, advanced version of creating your second state body. I really want to listen to this tape all the way through and see where it takes me. But again, very cool tape. Wave 6 Odyssey, Tape 2 Expansion, a lot of new sounds, a lot of interesting new techniques. So I really hope you enjoy that tape there, folks. And remember, as always, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.